Let's get to college football, where South Carolina hopes to crack the college football playoff this year after coming close last season. It's a special game for Gamecocks head coach Shane Beamer, who played at Vatech from 1995 to 99 for his father. Frank Beamer, the all-time winningest head coach in program history, 238 wins at Virginia Tech. The two schools used to play annually, but this will be their first matchup since 1991. We've got Chip Patterson and Brad Crawford joining us here for this segment, and Chip's here on set. So let's start with expectations for reigning SEC Freshman of the Year, Lenoris Sellers here. What would those expectations be, Chip?
I think that number one, more responsibility, more offensive responsibility. There was just such a great opportunity for Lenoris Sellers to be able to showcase the things that make him so good. You know, the ability to move around in the pocket, keep his eyes down the field, and of course the natural athleticism to be able to take off and make a play with your feet if you absolutely have to. But you think about some of the turnovers that we've seen at the skill positions for this South Carolina team and some of the players that need to be replaced. Now it's time to hit for him in the next step of the development, because oftentimes, many times in college football, we see a player with all the tools and with all the talent come in and have that strong first impression. But that's against the expectations, and that's why you get named the Freshman of the Year. Now the expectations raised. Now we've got folks like Ryan Wilson and the NFL draft experts talking about him like maybe one of the top quarterbacks in the class. And so I think that what we would like to see is improvement on what he does well, taking on some more responsibility and ownership within the offense, and then, of course, being able to clean up those very few mistakes in his game.
Brad, if I were to ask you when it comes to Sellers here, what are the expectations for you?
Yeah, for me, it starts with a big game Sunday against Virginia Tech. I mean, it's a spotlight chance for Lenoris to see some of that early Heisman buzz. Last season, the final 6 starts prior to that bowl loss to Illinois, there wasn't a quarterback in college football playing as well as Lenoris Sellers. He cut down on those early season turnovers, was not making the same mistakes, and then was starting to figure things out on third down. Now, I will say, Gamecocks are moving to Mike Shula coached offense now. It's going to be the same, similar scheme, but it's more of a pro-style look. Mike Shula, you remember, 15-1 with Cam Newton and the Panthers in 2015. Newton, Sellers, same body type, same skill set. But I think for Sellers to really generate more first-round buzz for this redshirt sophomore season, like Chip said, he needs to develop more as a passer and downfield threat. That's going to start with some of the help that the Gamecocks signed at wideout.
Nice callback and comp there, by the way, for Brad there. So if we talk about and stay on that side of the ball, depth at running back for the Gamecocks, having Rashul Faison, who was cleared by the NCAA, and it wasn't easy, had to wait a long time. Just take a look at how many stops he's had to make before getting to South Carolina, with most recently Utah State for the transfer here. Here's Shane Beamer on having him available for this game.
That whether Sewell was eligible or not, we were going to play multiple running backs, and now that he's eligible, he's going to play, and then there'll be other guys in that room that will also play. So it makes a room that I was really excited about already, makes that room even better, and gets me even more excited to just add to the depth and the personnel in that running back room.
Brad, what do you make of the road traveled by the running back here, and obviously the impact he might have in this game?
This was a huge signing for Gamecocks, probably the best player they signed out of the portal cycle in 2025. Rashul Faison is running back 1, and I know Shane Beamer said this week that regardless of his eligibility, had that waiver not come in, Oscar Attaway and some other guys were going to get carries. But Faison is going to be the straw that stirs the drink behind Lenoris Sellers. And I don't want to put expectations too high on this transfer from Utah State, but I talked to some guys inside that program, and they tell me that the skill set reminds them of Jahmyr Gibbs, the Detroit Lions running back, formerly of Alabama. The Tide kind of used him as a scat back of sorts, pass-catching threat out of the backfield. You look there, I mean, there is depth behind Rashul Faison, but he is the guy that on third down, not only is he going to get carries in the run game, but he's going to get passes thrown his way in the flats. And Lenoris Sellers, with a bunch of unproven freshmen at wide receiver outside of the couple returnees they have, they need a safety valve in the passing game. And I think you're going to see Rashul Faison open things up a bit for Mike Shula, especially as a wide-out threat out of the backfield.
Ding, ding, ding. When we talk about Lenoris Sellers and when we talk about how you take the next step, I look at the wide receiver options and I am not overly impressed. That is why a good running game, and just as Brad mentioned, having Faison also be a part of the passing game is so important for the development of the offense now under Mike Shula. And the last piece of this, I understand, Coach, you can tell us all about that deep running back room and about all those guys, but the effort that was put into trying to make sure that this player was eligible tells us everything we need to know about how that program values what face-on can be for the Gamecocks in 2025.
So let's stick with the Gamecocks and continue to ask you guys about impact players. Chip, who do you got?
Oh, I got Dylan Stewart. I mean, it's just, you talk about being so excited by what you saw early on, 6.5 sacks, just kind of a terror coming off the edge. And now, similar to Sellers, he's taking on more responsibility because he doesn't have Kyle Kennard on the other side of that defensive line. We see with some of these edge rushers, especially in the SEC, I think about Colin Simmons at Texas, also in this same light. He just takes your breath away because there's so much talent there. You can just recognize it. But what about the accumulation? What about the production? What about being an every single down kind of disruptor? I think that's what I'm looking for Dylan Stewart this season, and certainly in a very high-profile opener against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, for me, the breakout player and really key performer for the Gamecocks is going to be Nick Harbor at wide receiver. Primed to show that he's one of the alphas this season in that Gamecock wideout room. We know the speed, we know the size, former 5-star, but he hasn't put it all together from a playing standpoint. Perhaps that starts this weekend with his first 100-yard game against Virginia Tech. He ditched track this offseason for the first time in his career. He's full-time football now. He said recently that, he understands the route tree. He understands Gamecocks offense schematically. And there's a reason South Carolina did not sign a single portal wide receiver this cycle. Shane Beamer is confident that Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett, Jared Brown, some of the returning guys, Michael Smith at tight end, and 5 4-star freshman wide receivers, Beamer expects that room to be legit, if not one of the SEC's best at the position. And Nick Harbor, this is the time as a junior where everything comes together, and he has a breakout game this weekend.
All right, now let's get to the Hokies. And, Brad, I'll throw it right back at you. Impact player for Virginia Tech.
Yeah, it's got to be quarterback Tyrone Drones for me. I mean, this is a senior, multi-year star for Virginia Tech. We saw 2 years ago he put up nearly 3,000 yards of total offense, 22 touchdowns for the Hokies. But he didn't have that same flash last season. Maybe it was some wideout issues, the run game wasn't as steady, but he's the facilitator for Virginia Tech. And this offense goes through him, generating plays with his legs. Constant chain movement on third down is vital. Look, South Carolina has struggled at times against mobile quarterbacks. That's exactly what Tyrone Drones is. And he needs to play turnover-free, and most importantly, needs to have clock-eating and possession-churning drives to keep Lenora Sellers and Rasul Faison off the field. Tyrone Drones, the senior quarterback for Virginia Tech, he is my spotlight guy for this game.
I'm going to piggyback right off of that, Tommy. My impact player to watch is going to be wide receiver Aiden Green. And before we get into the specifics of Green, a little bit of context. This Virginia Tech program has been churning through offensive coordinators, and who they have in now is Philip Montgomery, who is an offensive coordinator under Art Briles at Baylor. And there is a belief, even coming from Kyron Drones, that this Montgomery-led offense will really be able to unlock the best of Drones, the best of the passing game. So then I say, who's going to be on the other end of that? And I'm going to do the one thing that I tell everybody not to do, and that's to overreact to a bowl game. Because Aiden Green, as all of a sudden, everybody, they had some seniors, some NFL-bound players. All of a sudden, he was given some more work. And what did he do there? 6 catches, 115 yards. So he's a third-year player. He hasn't made a huge impact, but there's a lot of excitement about what he can do with a little bit more work and also in this new offense. Kyron Drones, very, very mean things he said about offensive linemen. He said, my last offensive coordinator was an offensive lineman. My new offensive coordinator, Philip Montgomery, is a former quarterback. He can speak my language. So this is what they're saying, Tommy. We will see whether or not the Virginia Tech offense can get back on track with Kyron Drones, Aiden Green, and the new coordinator, Philip Montgomery, but that's what they're at least telling in terms of the narrative. It's
interesting. You guys mentioned the connection, sort of the spine, and if we go all the way up to Brent Pry, right?
Yep.
Year 4, and we talk about average a lot, but you talk about the last 2 seasons, 6-6, and then 13-13, and you split the bowl games, Brad. So what type of pressure for a guy like Brent Pry is he entering, not only for this season, but this game, you think?
Yeah, he has to face the music. I mean, last season, let's face it, it was a move in the wrong direction for this program, and Pry needs positive momentum this fall. If Virginia Tech loses to South Carolina and Atlanta in a big way, the Hokies could be staring at an 0-2 start because they face Vanderbilt the following weekend in Blacksburg. And that's a very good Commodores team. Diego Pavia coming back. Road trips to NC State, Georgia Tech, Florida State. That's not going to be easy. Louisville and Miami probably going to be ranked. at the time of those matchups. So I think Sunday's game and the home opener against Vanderbilt, an 0-2 start for the Hokies could lead to missing the postseason and probably potentially being out of a gig in December. So these first two non-conference games against SEC teams, at worst, Virginia Tech needs to split.
Virginia Tech fans were a little bit patient with Brent Pry. He was left a horrible situation from a roster perspective at the end of the Justin Fuente era. So he wins 3 games year one. No one really overreacts. But to Brad's point, this Virginia Tech team has not met its talent in the last couple of seasons. They just haven't delivered results. And they've come up on the wrong side. 0-5 in one-score games. And after watching a lot of those one-score games, it's not exactly bad luck. It is bad execution in crunch time that falls on the coaching staff, that falls on the players, that falls at the feet of Brent Pry. Now, Brent Pry, he says that this 2025 Virginia Tech team is the, quote, closest thing to his vision of Virginia Tech since he has arrived. Okay, Coach, now you got to go and deliver results, and it starts against South Carolina.
And it's also interesting what Brad had said. If they don't lose big, because they're 7.5-point underdogs in a neutral site game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, no Chick-fil-A in the concession stands, by the way, of course, as
Sunday.
we certainly know, on a Sunday. Yeah, so that's not going to be available for that. Guys, certainly appreciate it. Again, Sunday games when we have in college football, highlighted by this one at 3 Eastern, and then the big one down at Hard Rock Stadium at 7:30. Notre Dame, short road favorites in South Florida over Miami.